Hello, I'm Richard Vobes, the Bald Explorer, and this is another of my stories, the heritage of my life. This one, very personal one, this one, because it's very much about, well, two things really. Holidays, going on holiday as a child, so I've gone back in time a little bit, but also my first love, yes. So holidays, first of all, and so this is where I met my first love and, you know, your first experience, and I didn't really know what it was, but we'll get into that in a second. I remember going on holiday with my family twice, I think it was twice, to Spain. Nothing terribly exotic, typical sort of hotel type holiday, probably the late 60s. May have been as early as, well, as late as 1970 or 71. I probably was about 6 or 7, maybe, possibly younger. I don't remember much about it, but it was one of those holidays where it was either in Alicante or Barcelona or somewhere in that region of Spain. And as I say, I don't really remember too much about it other than being on holiday in a hotel, which I think was fairly basic, probably a package holiday, and at the hotel was this massive swimming pool. Now, as a young kid, I'd never really seen a swimming pool. Probably the only swimming pool I'd been to was the one at Crawley, or Cranley, I think. When I was a kid growing up, that's the one that we would go to. Horsham had a swimming pool where I used to live in Sussex, but it was an outdoor pool back then. So this was an outdoor pool, but it was in a hot country, and I remember pretty much spending most of that holiday, which is typical with kids if there's a swimming pool, in the water. I do remember from the balcony, we must have been, I suppose, 3 or 4 stories up, looking out to the coast. And there was this small island, you know, very small island, not like an island as big as the Isle of Wight, but just very much like a huge rock, really, that I think people could swim to or row out to. But I don't really remember much more than that. I don't even remember the aeroplane journey, and that would have been my first experience going in an aeroplane, taking off and landing. None of that is in my head at all. But my dad was very keen on taking photographs and transparencies, or slides as we used to call them. And there is a slide somewhere, I don't know where now, in the collection of Dad's slides that I probably got somewhere in a box tucked away, but no way of getting it off there. A picture of me on a balcony with this tiny little rubber Spanish policeman that must have been bought for me as a souvenir, looking out with this island behind me. And I remember as kids, after holidays, we would have these pictures blown up on the big screen at home. Dad would get the projector out and blow them all up, and we would look at them. And yeah, it was good fun. I think there's another one with my sister and I on a lilo, one of these lilos where the two of the sections that are supposed to have been ribbed have blown out to one big section, and we're lying on this like this, kicking, and we're very young. So I think, you know, may even been younger. The memories are just very vague. Mostly the holidays that I had were caravanning holidays, and I remember again, pretty young, probably again 5 or 6 or 7 or in that sort of time period, we went as a family to Wales and stayed in a static caravan. And I remember the static caravan fairly clearly. It wasn't like one of these plush static caravans that you have these days, you know, these great big box affairs that look very expensive. This was like an old-fashioned caravan that had the wheels removed, and it was bricked up on a farm somewhere in Wales, and I'm not quite sure where. We were about a mile from the coast, because I remember that because my dad and I would walk off. I don't think my sister and my mum were too keen on this, but we would walk off and up to this hill that was nearby, quite a big hill, sort of mountainous hill, and clamber up. And there we would see the views of the coast. My dad used to love the sea, which is why he moved to Goring, I suppose, to be by the sea. And he loved the views in Wales, and we would go up there and he would point to them. And of course, as a kid, you know, I was keen to go out and do things, probably wasn't that bothered about the view, although the landscape and that craggy, rocky type of thing so much appeals to me now. And it's interesting how these very early experiences really affect you later on. I think there's something very much in that. There was a big barn, I remember, on this farm, as well as animals. I remember there were donkeys and probably sheep and pigs and probably others that we would go and see and pet and things like that. But I remember there was a donkey that is sort of etched on my memory. But more, there was this huge barn that kids were allowed to play in, and it had hay in it. It was stacked with hay, and I remember we were climbing up onto these hay bales and leaping off and then sort of swimming in this loose hay at the bottom. It was just magnificent, and we would come back covered in the stuff. Great fun for a sort of all British holiday. Well, another one that I went to when I was 10, and now I've got more vivid memories about this one. We had the car, the Morris Traveller that I was mentioning, not the one that I had where the crock pot hit me, but my father's one, which was NRX 541. I mentioned the number plate last time. And we had a Sprite caravan. My dad had bought this Sprite caravan, and we went to Studland Bay in Dorset. And just back from the bay, again about half a mile or something like that, was a farm which had a caravan park on it. Well, I don't think there was any farm animals. It just seemed like, you know, it was all open country, and there was this caravan park, and there wasn't very many caravans when we arrived, and I think in total there was probably only about 10 in all in. It wasn't a huge park, it was just one little field really that was let out, and I think there was a couple of tents. I don't really remember too much, but what I do remember is when we arrived, my dad would be all hands to the pump, and he would be getting the caravan unhitched, and you know, it was always in the way. So it was like, you go and play, Richard, and he would be winding the feet down on the Sprite caravan and getting the gas bottles and all of that, and perhaps Mum would be getting some lunch ready and that sort of thing, because I think we arrived probably about lunchtime on a Saturday, or whatever day it was that we started this week's holiday. And I remember going off down to the end of the field where there was this wooden fence. Presumably there was a lane the other side of it, but it was a wooden fence you couldn't see through, that was probably about 5 foot high, taller than me, and a couple of trees. And I was picking up sticks and sticking them into the fence. I remember this very clearly, sticking them into the fence and sort of building, I don't know, some sort of weird bridgey thing that bridged one part of the fence to another with these sticks. And as I was doing this, I heard this voice say to me in a northern accent, because I didn't really know at the time it was a northern accent, "What are you doing?" And I looked round, and there was this girl. And I said to her, "Oh, I'm just sticking sticks in the fence whilst my Mum and Dad fix up the caravan." And she just thought that was silly and odd. But I looked at this girl, and it just hit me like that. There was something about this girl that I had never experienced in my life before, and I had no idea what it was. I mean, there were girls at school who were just girls, and I didn't normally play with the girls, I played with boys. But there was this girl with long brown hair, and we became, and dark brown eyes, and we became friends. And there were other kids at the campsite also to whom I became friends with. But there was something special about this girl, and of course, you know, what's your name? And her name was Julie. And I said, my name's Richard, and my sister Corinne, and all of that. And I just kept thinking I wanted to be with Julie. And I couldn't understand why, but I just found her, to say that she was beautiful as far as I remember. I mean, I never saw her since this holiday. But there was just something. She was funny, she was vivacious, she had something that just knocked me over, bowled me over. But I felt very guilty and ashamed to have these feelings. Now, should clear straight away, there were no sexual feelings in anything like that. I hadn't yet gone into puberty or anything like that. So there was none of that at all. But we would play in the group, and I would always try and sort of get close to her, but I felt I couldn't say anything. I didn't know what this was inside me. But I knew that I really, really liked her. Well, there was a point, I don't remember too much about the overall things we did in the holiday, and we went walking. I remember we went down to the Harry Rocks, and I remember, I think Julie and some other the kids came with us, and we were counting all these ladybirds and counting the spots on the ladybirds and seeing who had, found them. And they were flying all over us. Back in those days, there were bugs and flies and all sorts of things. The wonderful insects of the countryside were still there before we eradicated them with our monoculture and pesticides. But anyway, that's another story. But one day I remember we were sitting around playing games, and somebody said, "Oh, why don't we play, what is it, Kiss Dare, I've got it written, True Dare, Kiss Promise, Love Hate Command." And we said, "Well, what's that?" And it was a game. You sit in a circle, and when it's your go, you have to choose one of these things: True Dare, Kiss Promise, Love Hate, or Command. And then a person next to you or opposite or whatever says, "Okay, so if you pick, say, true," somebody would then ask you, "Is it true that you like putting egg on your face?" And you'd have to say yes or no, whatever, as school kids would do. Or command, "I command you to do such and such." Well, we played this game a few times, and then I remember we were sitting in this circle playing it one time, and Julie chose love, and somebody else then said, "Do you love Richard?" And I didn't know where to put myself, because I felt like the secret was out. And I remember rolling backwards and forwards, because we were just sitting on the ground, rolling, going, "Say no, say no, say no." But in my head, I was saying, "Say yes, say yes." It was a strange thing. Well, we all exchanged addresses. I remember somebody had these golden eggs as cardboard. We all wrote our addresses on this golden egg. And I think somewhere I've even still got that. I don't know quite where. But the thing was, we parted. We left earlier because they were on there for 2 weeks, Julie and her family. And my sister and I and my family, we were just there for the 1 week. So we pulled away. And I remember feeling so gutted, so awful that I was leaving. It wasn't that I was having holiday blues, leaving the holiday. It was, I could not stop thinking about this girl, Julie. And I remember we stopped on the way back, because my dad always drove very slowly and very carefully with the caravan on the back. My mum used to tease him something rotten. "Oh, come on, Trevor, drive a bit faster, won't you?" So everything took so long. So we pulled up to have a cup of tea, and Dad, wound the wheels down and got in the caravan and made this tea. And I wandered off, I remember, and I sat on my own, and I sat on this tree stump, and I wanted to cry. I just could, it was like, I don't understand what's happened to me, and I wanted to cry. Well, we did write to each other for a while, but these things, they peter out, and it didn't really go anywhere, because she lived up in Yorkshire, up in somewhere Birstall or Batley or somewhere like that, near Leeds. And so I never saw her again, and we lost contact with her in the end. But I remember, the thing that I remember about this whole thing was, when I then went to secondary school for the first time, some of the other boys, and it was an all-boys school, some of the other boys would bring in, that we were then going through that period of puberty, and they would be bringing in these naughty magazines smuggled in and going, yeah, look at this. And I remember them showing me these pictures, and I thought it was the most disgusting thing possible. I didn't want to see it. I had no idea, because for me, my experience of what love was with this girl. It was so innocent and so pure, which is an odd term to use, but in that way, that the whole business about sex I found repellent and disgusting and horrible. And it took me years to come to grips with what that was, because I'd had this much earlier experience on holiday. So yeah, first holiday romance, and it affected me for many years. So there you go. But that was pretty much all the holidays I had as a kid. And then thereafter, I don't know, not really had the pangs to go abroad too much these days. I have been abroad, but the pangs to go on holiday other than within this country and learn about England is very much my passion and my endeavour. But there you go, my first love. Be interested to know your story of your first love, if you still remember it and are not ashamed to talk about it. Shove them in the comments. Be thrilled to read some of those. It's a funny old life, isn't it? Anyway, I hope you've enjoyed that. Thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to follow, like and subscribe, become a patron, support what I do and all of that. And hopefully when the weather clears up, I'll be back out exploring this wonderful land. Till next time, thanks for watching. Bye-bye.